Hi, hello. My name is Michael Briant, and I directed Blake 7, and it's still alive and kicking.
The third Blake Seven story you worked on was Project Avalon, and for many people, people believe that this is where Blake Seven finally comes together and finds itself. So you've got a mission, you've got all the crew involved, you've got Serverland and Travis, the Federation. So it's a quite a hallmark of a story. Do you know when you first got the script for this and what your first impressions were of it?
I mean, I would have got, I really don't quite remember when I got the script. I was very aware of the pressure Chris Boucher was under just getting these scripts out because honestly, Terry was delivering, like I said, 40 pages for a 70-minute, there should have been 50 or 60 pages, and he was delivering 30 or 40 in a synopsis. I mean, I suspect that all the stories were Terry-nations. I mean, I suspect Terry did, yeah, well, this is the story, and he did the outline, and he'd do a few pages of it, and then go, yeah, that's fine, and he'd deliver it, give me the check. And Chris had to make it into 50 minutes. Chris had no choice. So I don't, and I'm pretty sure that that was about the time where Chris and David Maloney had actually sorted for themselves out how they wanted the show to progress. They had sorted in their heads the direction of the rest of the series because no scripts existed. I mean, honestly, when I sat down with episode one, there was episode one. That was all there was. With Pennant on his way, maybe there was episode two, or not, but that was there weren't 13 scripts. There were just a couple of scripts, and we were in production making the show. So I reckon if what you say is true, that, and I suppose it possibly was, that this was the moment where the popular Blake Seven all came together as an entity, then I think this was the moment when Chris Boucher and David Maloney had got together how they saw the show going forward. And they were also by then, I think, was it transmitting by then? Was it transmitting? Yeah. So believe me, the BBC has very, very in-depth audience research. And by then, they would have known what characters were popular, what characters were less popular, what storylines were popular. They would have had enormous in-depth reaction as to how the viewing public saw the show. And that would have been feeding into that would have been influencing them as to how they put the show together for future episodes. I remember coming into it, I certainly had the feeling that it was, when I walked into that rehearsal room, because by that time I'd done two eps. The web was, as I've described it, it was fine, but not as good as the way back. But the way back I thought was brilliant. Pennant had done a couple of eps, and Veer had come in and almost had a nervous breakdown. I think he'd never done Doctor Who, he'd never done sci-fi. So for Veer, it was like, oh, and I think Dougie Camfield had come in and done one. So actually, when I walked into that rehearsal room, it was, the company had changed. There was a different feel from the previous episodes that I'd done. Not unsurprisingly, because Gareth was really the only actor in the first one. But there was actually, that's interesting you should say that, there was a different feel about it. And that was an awful lot to do with Jacqueline Pearce and Stephen. Yeah, Stephen, who I'd worked with a lot before. That had a lot to do with Jacqueline and Stephen, and it had a lot to do with the Federation becoming more real somehow. It had become more of the stuff in that show that where you can see a background to the Federation, can't you? You can see, before, it was always something that was taught. It was the Federation was a concept, wasn't it? You didn't really see much of it. You didn't see much of the hardware of it. Whereas in that show, you began to see the hardware of it. Was that the one where I went back to Wookiee Hole and did caves and an explosion, or was that?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that bloody robot. Yep. I'm pretty sure that was the robot that I absolutely hated.
It was.
I'm absolutely sure Visual Effects just got that robot when, oh yeah, there's the one from Doctor Who, rejigged it a little bit, and it became that robot again. And it was just as bad.
I think you'll find Terry Nation put the robot in because he wanted something like the Daleks. He was always looking for the next big thing like the Daleks.
And it had been used if that's the rumor, I can totally believe it. I can totally believe that. Yes. Yeah.
When they previously used the robot, it had just failed totally. They just sort of pulled it along a fishing wire. But I believe when you saw the robot, you had the same idea as Death to the Daleks. And if we put the robot onto camera tracks, we can actually make it move and look better.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wookiee Hole Cave, that tunnel in Wookiee Hole Cave was sort of gravel. I mean, it may have had a cement base, but it had gravel and stuff on top. And Daleks run on, furniture casters. So if you'd had furniture casters, it just couldn't have operated. None of these things can operate on location. You have to put them on hardboard or blockboard or something if you want them to be moving around. And if you want it running up and down distances, then it really has to be on. It has to be on a track or on sheets of hardboard, blockboard, and that really wasn't practical in Wookiee Hole. That's where the explosion was. There was all this business. There was this cave door, which was the junction between the Wookiee Hole tunnel location and the studio where they were having the big gunfight. And there was the explosion, which I think Sally Knyvette's character set off.
Avon, Kelly, bring us up. Did you hear me? Bring us up. Avon, Kelly.
And Viz Effects triumphed with that because I love them really. And I'm not. There was never any animosity. There was just sort of mild irritation on my part. They probably hate me. We did the explosion, and the tunnel filled with smoke. I mean, just like in a major fire, the tunnel filled with smoke. We were coughing, and we were like 100 yards from an entrance to get out of that tunnel, to get out of that section of the caves. And somebody got on their hands and knees and went, if you get on your hands and knees, you can actually see the floor, you can actually see the ground and breathe a bit. And so the entire crew ended up on their hands and knees, crawling out of the smoke-filled tunnel to the door that got them into the grate outside after that explosion, coughing and choking. So that was quite exciting. I didn't recognize the robot as being the one from Colony in Space, but because in recent years these two productions, Doctor Who and Blake 7, have sort of come back in my life, and people send me copies of the shows. If you look at the one in Colony in Space and then look at the one in Blake 7, I'm damn sure it's the same robot, exactly the same robot. And it didn't have to have wheels or tracks put on it because they were already there. Visual effects just went, because visual effects were something which were the one department at the BBC who didn't throw things away. They had a storage area where they kept stuff, quite rightly, whereas all costume department and props department, whenever McKinsey came in and stopped the BBC having warehouses and keeping their stuff altogether. But visual effects department was probably the only department that had its own stock of stuff, models and things, effects that it had made. So yeah, I'm damn sure you get the tapes out from those two productions. That's the same robot, I'm certain. Same and the same way of running it on railway tracks.
Speaking of casting for Project Avalon, this was the first time Glynis Barber appeared in the show. She was to come back a few years later in a regular role. But did you cast Glynis in this episode, and had you worked with her before?
Yeah, I gave Glynis her very first television job ever.
Cast a Monique Bryant as a mutoid. Any relation?
Yeah, keep it in the family.
You did a lot of work with Stuart Fell. And what was he like as a stuntman and stunt director?
Oh, Stuart, yeah, terrific. I mean, Stuart was a real pleasure to work with. I mean, you got on very well with him. He was no sort of, he didn't make a great drama out of it all. It wasn't all sort of, you just said, I want this, and you'd go, yeah, okay. Could you throw yourself off the building? Yeah, okay. Could you blow yourself up? Yeah, okay. All stuntmen, when they do the job, want to give you a bit more than you've asked for because, yeah, I guess like directors always wanted to be as good as they possibly can do it. Stuntmen wanted to be as good because they want another job, and also because they take a pride in their work. But Stuart was an ex-para in Borneo. Yeah, he was an ex-paratrooper, I think in Borneo. Were we fighting in Borneo or Kenya or somewhere like that? And then he came out of the military. He told me this terrible story. He was after Mau Mau rebels, and he told me the story that they used to go out ambushing. Quite interesting thing about ambushing, that when you're waiting to ambush somebody, you mustn't think about them. You must keep your mind absolutely blank, because if you think about them, the people who are walking into the ambush feel that they become, so you're taught to think nothing. And if they were out in the jungle on patrol and they shot a Mau Mau terrorist, I think it was Mau Mau, that they were, whoever it was that they were after, and killed them, clearly they couldn't, take the body or the bodies back. So they used to cut off their hands for their fingerprints and carry them on a looped string around their belt, so that when they got back to base at the end of a 6-day patrol, they were able to account for these kills and say, here, there's that. So that was Stuart's story to me, which is quite gruesome. Yeah. Stuart was great. Yeah. What stunts was he doing in that? I can't remember.
Well, he was doing a lot of jumping off the rocks and a lot of the stunt falls for the massacre and gunshots.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. The gun battle yes, it all comes back with David Bailey. Bailey, that's right. Who was also in Robots of Death. I would tell Stuart what I wanted, and he would then enhance it. And he would probably enhance it more than most stunt guys. and he would probably do most of it. He would probably do most of it himself. I mean, I'm not sure if there were any other stuntmen on that show, but I think by that time the budgets were really being, the budget problems were mega by then. If you could get one stunt guy to do 6 or 7 different stunts in the same thing as different characters, then that's what you did. So that's why Stuart was there doing all those different things, like the barrels. I would say, I want you to fall over being shot for that. And he'd say, yeah, hey, so Michael, if we stack up these barrels here, I can take all those with me, and that'll look much better than just my. So when you see, is it barrels rolling about? That's Stuart's idea. That's Stuart going, yeah, Michael, I can do what you want, but I can also make it better by having these barrels falling over or whatever. So, yeah, that's why you have a little black book, and that's why you work with people that you worked with before, because they're going to be, I want them to make me look good.
Project Avalon ends with a very large running gun battle. What is the director the elements to make something exciting when filming on a limited set, a couple of corridors? How do you manage to keep excitement happening in a show?
Gun battles are actually, they're a real problem in a TV studio because everyone is so close together. And generally speaking, they're meant to be a long way away. If you're close to somebody with a gun, you're probably going to be able to shoot them or get shot. If you're some distance away, then there's a chance of people missing.
Put this on.
Right, fella, fall back.
Go!
Jenna.
Right, go!
So it's difficult. Basically, it's a mechanical thing. Basically, you set up very set situations. And broadly speaking, in a gun battle, you have one person shooting a gun, a shot of somebody shooting a gun, and you have a shot of the round arriving and either hitting the other person or missing the other person or whatever. So you need to very clearly set up with the actor who's shooting, say Sally, with those, slightly dodgy guns that we had. You needed in the rehearsal room to set up, bang, you're shooting the guy there, then you're shooting that guy, then you're shooting at that guy, then a round is going to hit the thing above your head or whatever, or a round is going to, you've got a extra or stuntman perhaps in the studio with a round, which of course is an explosive charge put into the scenery, detonator probably, put into the scenery and plastered over. So it is very much a mechanical setting up. And as a director, you set up the shots you're going to take, the shots as they're going to be received, and vice versa from the antagonist. Then you put it together in the edit. But you've got to have a plan. You can't just do that. You actually have a very set plan as to how the gun battle is going to go on. So you work out your set plan, and then you instruct the actors in an absolutely mechanical way as to how it's going to happen. And then try to make it as real as you can. Then try to make it, in a TV studio, really difficult because you can't get the separation and the distance. On location, easier.
The final story. Oh, I was just saying, there was a story told about you telling Sally Knyvette to start going bang bang.
In the rehearsal room, I must admit it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but Sally Knyvette had not done a great deal of television, and I think she'd never done any shooting scenes. So when we came to this corridor shooting scene, I said, so we know when you're firing with your gun. And in the rehearsal room, she was holding either a wooden set square or a piece of wood, not a plastic thing with lights on it. I said, every time you do it, I'd like you to say bang, bang, and then we'll know that you shot. So bang, 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 bang. And that, I confess, a little bit of me was that in rehearsals, it just used to amuse me, watching Sally going bang, 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 bang. It made me smile quite there. So we did this for 6 or 7 days in the rehearsal room. When we got to the studio and we started the first run through of the scene, Sally came around the corner, pointed her plastic doobry and went bang, 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 to which the floor manager quite explained it would be better not to, just to press the trigger and let them light up.